Okay, so recently I posted on TikTok about how I got into a PhD in neuroimaging, and it sort of took off quite well. So I decided I'd just take a few minutes to talk about how I got into the post in more detail, a bit about what neuroscience is, and also what my path there looked like. But I'm going to be making a sourdough, so I'm going to be voiceover dubbing this in a bit, as it's my first time making a sourdough, so I need to concentrate on the bread. But hopefully you enjoy this video.
Okay, so whilst I'm making a sourdough in the background of a video, I'm just going to start by defining what I mean by neuroscience. And so going off a definition provided by the National Institute of Health, neuroscience is the study of the physiological, cellular, molecular, and genetic processes underlying the function of the brain and nervous system. So I undertook my high school A-levels within the UK, so I did maths, psychology, fine art in EPQ. And in fact, I actually chose them originally because I wanted to go into architecture, and actually physics didn't go that well, so I changed my mind pretty swiftly. And so after my A-levels, I didn't have the best grades. I ended up with a 2 B's, a C, and an A. And so I decided to undertake an art foundation for a year and just take a year not doing any exams and focus on illustration, which I really loved. And so whilst I was doing this year, I applied for places for BSc psychology degrees. So I applied to Oxford Brookes, Bath Spa, Chester, Keele and Royal Holloway, and got offers from all of those actually apart from Royal Holloway. And so I decided to undertake a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Oxford Brookes. So this was actually a fantastic course which I cannot fault, with a fairly small faculty, but there was about 150 of us in a year. And as with many psychology degrees, this was a BPS, or British Psychological Society accredited degree. And so we had all the main components of cognitive, biological, developmental and social psychology, along with quite intensive research methods training. And so within my third year at university, I also was chosen to undertake a 12-week Hacking for Ministry of Defence course, where over a period of 3 months, myself and some others from within the university outside of psychology took an existing AI problem that the defence and science technology laboratories are facing, and we proposed a solution at the end of the 12 weeks after spending that time sort of talking to various influential leaders within the field and trying to get our heads around the problem. Alongside that as well, I also worked as a part-time research assistant sort of within the neurocognition lab, and so my duties included running, setting up and analysing the EEG system, as well as designing experimental paradigms for a sensory integration study. This all went rather well, and so at the end of my third year I ended up graduating with a first-class degree. Woo! And my dissertation on the use of face masks in obscuring facial identity ended up getting me a place to present at the BPS Cognitive Section Conference in 2021. And so along with this, I found that I really enjoyed working with patients, and I absolutely loved the neuroimaging component. And so this led me to apply for various masters at university. And so I decided to apply to Oxford, to Imperial, to KCL and to Nottingham Trent, because with a first class degree you can apply to pretty much anywhere. However, I only got places at KCL and Nottingham Trent. KCL for neuroscience and Nottingham Trent for neuropharmacology. And so ultimately, because of the research that came out of King's, I decided to swing my way and go for King's and move to London in the summer of 2021, where there for a year I spent my time doing a master's in neuroscience, where we looked at basically all the core components of neuroscience, so from a molecular, from a cellular, from a cognitive perspective, from neuroimaging, and I then specialised within neuroimaging for my optional module, and this is also ultimately what I did my master's research project in. And so for my master's project, I looked at behaviour associated with neurotransmitter function in MRI scans for patients with visual snake syndrome, and this led me to actually get a publication shortly after the master's ended Whilst I was on the Masters though, it's worth saying that I was applying for PhD places pretty much all year. I applied to about 10 to 12 places, so multiple ones from Oxford, from UCL, from Imperial, from KCL, you name it, again. And apart from interviews at one at KCL and one at Oxford, I didn't get very far, they were all rejections. And so I was then finding myself that I was having to apply for jobs at the end of the Masters. As with many people, I found myself not knowing exactly what I wanted to do. I know that I loved research and I loved that I wanted to do a PhD. However, this still left me with a problem of trying to find a job. So I'm going to go into this later in a proper video to explain how I went about finding a job. But I sent over about 60 applications. I emailed academics with various cold emails, and so this ultimately landed me a neuroimaging research position for 18 months, looking at cognitive deficits in patients with schizophrenia and depression. And so for 18 months I worked in this role with patient-facing contact, being in charge of recruiting patients, screening patients, running the cognitive tests myself, collecting data, and training up other team members. Within the 18 months, I'd been chatting with the rest of the team and my supervisors, and so they ended up offering me a PhD within the department. And so that's how I ended up getting myself a PhD in neuroimaging at King's College London. And so I'll be keeping you updated with how it goes. As always, thank you for listening, and if you could like, comment and subscribe, it would mean the world to me.